cult cinema news. We're just gonna get right into it. The Snyder Cut of Justice League is actually coming out, so that means it was always around. No, no, that's a big misnomer. We'll get right into that. Why that's a big bit of misinformation there. The only reason you could have conceivably said that there was a secret Snyder secret Snyder cut of the film lying around would be that Warner Brothers had totally turned on Zack Snyder and that they were just hiding it out of spite. Which, to be fair, some movie studios have done that sort of thing in the past, but judging by the amount of faith they've had in Zack Snyder up to this point, I get it probably didn't. And two things have really come out about this release that have kind of put that idea to bed. First of all, Zack Snyder didn't leave the Justice League project because he was fired so much as the fact that his daughter had passed away in the midst of production, and that had precluded him from finishing the Justice League project. Secondly, the cut isn't coming out till 2021, which is after the HBO Max streaming service is going to be launched on is coming. So that's otherwise they would just put it on at launch, I figure. But even if that's not true, they've attached a $20 to $30 million budget to this cut of the movie, which leads me to believe that they're doing some computer animation and post-production on this film that was not made for the theatrical cut. This differs from a lot of director's cuts. A lot of director's cuts are of movies that either rely on practical effects or that are completely without major visual effects at all. With this sort of thing, the version of the Snyder Cut that exists now, even if it's cut into something that's theoretically watchable, or at least understandable, is going to lack a large amount of CGI elements that are going to make it watchable, at least to the general public. Some of the Zack Snyder super fans out there would probably watch the ultimate cut of Justice League with no CGI because they were really curious about where the story would go, but the general public is not going to want to watch that for obvious reasons. Without the CGI, some of the costumes on, like anything that Ben Affleck or Henry Cavill or certainly Cyborg at very least would look very bad and unwatchable. So let's get right into it now that we've laid down the groundwork there. Originally, Zack Snyder had released Man of Steel, and then he had released Batman v Superman, and then he had been original director on Justice League. This was a part of a initiative from Warner Brothers to have a sort of, they were calling it the Snyderverse at the time of Batman v Superman, where he was going to be the driving force for the first two Justice League movies and the start of the DCEU, at least at the beginning. I think they've certainly gone away from that. He hasn't gotten the commercial returns that they maybe wanted. Obviously with Justice League, not so much with Batman v Superman. It made over $800 million, which obviously doesn't compare to the similar movies that Marvel has been putting out of that level, which are making well over $1 billion. So, yeah, it's just not, I don't think they're wanting to go forward with him so much. And what are you going to do? So, yeah, why is this taking so long to make? Well, obviously the CGI, and yeah, Zack Snyder had to leave the project due to his daughter's death and during the production of Justice League. And yeah, he obviously, I don't think it would have been expected of him to be finishing the movie under that grieving process. And it's been 2 years now. He's at least able to work now. Yeah, it's been some time. Feels he's able to work on the project now. Also with coronavirus, there has been reports of there being some freeing of resources, likely from some other project not being filmed on schedule because of it, and they're probably taking that post-production crew and putting them on this so they can keep working on other stuff, which is good. Always nice to hear them getting in. Nice to hear people getting a bit of work when they'd otherwise be sitting on their butts. yeah, that's basically the deal. The Snyder Cut couldn't have been produced at launch of the Blu-ray release, like a lot of people had like a lot of people were expecting, and that had happened with Batman v Superman, which had gotten its Ultimate Cut. The difference with that one being that the Batman v Superman Ultimate Cut only has, I think, one additional computer effect in there. There is one other special effect, but I believe it's practical. The rest of it is scenes where the actors are in regular clothes in sets talking to people, sometimes in sets that were already there, and was likely filmed during the process of actual principal photography, or at least expanded photography. So yeah, that's the difference there. I think the implication here is that we're getting something a lot more CGI in the Snyder Cut of Justice League. So probably taking a bit more of what was going to be in Zack Snyder's original vision for the film, and obviously taking out what was in Joss Whedon's cut of the film after Joss Whedon had taken over directing the project. So a couple things we gotta discuss here. What form is the Snyder Cut's probably going to take? Now, this is largely speculation, comparing it to, obviously, the Batman v Superman Ultimate Cut, which is the nearest comparison we can draw. With what the changes we got with the Batman v Superman Ultimate Cut from the theatrical cut were the movie was about another half hour in length. It was R-rated, whereas the theatrical cut is PG-13, and some scenes there's a few scenes that are changed and a lot of scenes that are added. The Ultimate Cut is usually respected by the people who are fans of Batman v Superman and Zack Snyder as the superior cut of the film. There is some disagreement, but generally it's regarded as a superior cut of the film. Now, the reason it was a half hour longer was obviously those talking scenes that I had mentioned earlier were added, and they actually do help quite a bit. They add a really large bit of context to the film that theatrical audience were probably begging for. Also, as for the R rating, it's a very soft R. It's not like they're adding tons of swears to it that weren't in the theatrical cut or something, or a lot of blood. I think the scene that quenched it was a scene at the beginning that replaces some stuff out of the intro. That is not in the theatrical cut. Instead, you see some of Lex Luthor's goons setting bodies on fire. And I think that was maybe too graphic to be put into a PG-13 rated movie, and they had to replace that. And yeah, they were just accomplishing the same thing they had done in Batman v Superman, but a little bit more clear and spending more time on it so that the audience is less confused, which was a bit of an issue, because the build up to the action scenes the audience wanted was condensed and therefore harder to understand. So we've heard a couple things about the Snyder Cut of Justice League. I've obviously said that it's very likely some computer generation is going to be added. No actors have been confirmed to return for the post-production. I don't believe there's going to be any new filming, but they've said that it's possible that some of them are going to get new lines. I've heard mention of Darkseid perhaps making an appearance, which I think would help, though that could take any number of forms. Who knows if that even gets him a actor. And there's been saying that it could be a 4-hour cut, or perhaps broken up into a sort of a mini-series, as like a 6-part mini-series, which would be, I guess, broken up into half-hour plus chunks. So there's that. Either way, I think it depends on how long the Snyder Cut actually ends up being. A lot of the claims of length, I think, are at least somewhat speculation. I think experienced directors can tell how long a film's going to be in certain ways, how long the film's going to be based on what they've seen of the raw footage. But yeah, it's going to be a bit of speculation. We'll have to wait a little bit to see what the final length is, and some stuff. And I mean, we don't know how thoroughly he's re-gone over the film at this point, so he might make some changes, and that's possible, or maybe stuff that didn't appear as good, or so it'll largely we'll keep an eye out. I imagine there will be a trailer at some point in the future, but this isn't coming out to 2021, so we'll have to wait a good bit for that, I believe. So another question is how this is going to fit into the DCU. Is this going to be the canon version of Justice League? It's possible. I'm not sure. But to the idea that it would be canon to the DCEU, the only thing you really need to add to this that would contradict future movies would be adding Darkseid into this movie. And I don't think that would be as a big fight scene. I think it would just be like him standing around like Thanos did in the original Avengers. And let's face it, if the DCEU continues in existence, Darkseid is going to be a character they're going to have to address. So he is going to be around for that future bit. As for the other things, it depends on whether Snyder feels he's going to set up the next Justice League movie, which, like I've said, if that could be as simple as just making sure Darkseid's in this, and that he is now a threat that is looming over, and then another director who, or perhaps Zack Snyder, who eventually directs Justice League 2, would bring in Darkseid or some second threat that, at very least, I think this is going to introduce Darkseid as the big villain of the DCU. We'll see what form that takes, but I think a lot of the understanding is this is going to, what the Snyder Cut fans want is that this caps off the story from Batman v Superman, which wasn't done terribly effective in the theatrical cut of Justice League. Some of it's there, but it's very glossed over, and we don't get those great character moments that we were maybe wanting. I know a lot of you don't like the Batman v Superman cut. I don't care. This is very much a treat for the fans that do want it, and they're playing. Warner Brothers is clearly playing to that audience. I think they've more or less given up on the idea that Zack Snyder is going to be the billion-dollar director for the DCEU. We'll see about that. We'll see if he directs any future DCEU movies. But, I mean, the DCEU has been improving generally. Aquaman was quite good. I'd say Wonder Woman, but that was still in the Zack Snyder era, I believe. I would say. Aquaman was pretty good. The new Birds of Prey was pretty good. Cassandra Cain was kind of screwed over a bit, but it's still a good movie that I think a lot of people enjoy. Didn't make the money that Suicide Squad did, but what you gonna do? There is the question of that in Justice League that was teased at the end of the Justice League theatrical cut. I don't know if that's gonna be the Justice League 2 villains, or perhaps the Suicide Squad 2 movie villains, but we'll see. So yeah, be expecting a long 3.5 hour plus cut of Justice League in 2021 on HBO Max. It's kind of exciting. I'm cautiously optimistic, no, I'm not going to use that word. I'm fairly optimistic about this. I think that that Warner Brothers is willing to give them a fair shake on this film, and that it'll probably turn out alright. At least it'll be something that the Batman v Superman Ultimate Cut fans will enjoy. And really, isn't that what's important? That they get the film that they want. Yeah, it's not going to make them $1 billion, but the people that want it to be Avengers are just going to watch Avengers anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much whether... Yeah, I think we've covered everything. I think at least it'll be a bit better than the theatrical cut of Justice League, which was just kind of a bland Avengers movie, for the most part, and the stuff that it'll be nice seeing a bit more of Zack Snyder's footage getting put in, because I think Joss Whedon's corniness is a very clashing aesthetic with Zack Snyder's version of filmmaking, and they're just not. It's weird that they'd even try to put them on the same project like this. They're not compatible filmmakers. Anyway, I think that's all of it. Make sure to follow my regular podcast, Kyle and Cody's called CinemaCast. We review movies with cult fan bases and box office flops and underappreciated gems. That comes out, that the next episode will come out later in the week, and regular episodes are usually come out Sundays. Remember to follow us on KC CinemaPod on Twitter, and Kyle and Cody's called CinemaCast on Facebook, and like, comment, subscribe if this makes it on YouTube. Remember to circulate the podcast link, because it's also going up on the podcast links. Give us those 5-star reviews on iTunes, circulate the links, tell your friends. Have a nice day, listeners.